Rachel. I didn't expect to see you here at this hour.
Hi, David. I often come here in the afternoon to read. Still keeping up with your running routine, I see?
Yeah, I really think jogging is the best way to keep my mind clear and refreshed. After every run, I always feel like my thoughts are renewed.
That sounds nice. But do you really think that exercise alone is enough to heal the mind?
Maybe. Physical activity is a powerful mental medicine, one that many people are missing out on.
Maybe we should talk more about that.
Honestly, I believe physical exercise is one of the most powerful ways to take care of your mental health. Every time I go for a run, I feel lighter, not just physically, but emotionally too. It's like I'm shaking off all the stress and anxiety with each step.
I can see that, and I'm sure it helps a lot of people feel better. But I wonder, does it really solve anything on a deeper level? I mean, what about people struggling with trauma, depression, or chronic anxiety? Can running truly heal them?
Well, I'm not saying it's a magical cure for everything, but it's a great starting point. When you exercise, your body releases endorphins. That's the feel-good hormone, right? It lifts your mood naturally, without medication. Plus, it gives structure to your day. That alone can help a lot.
Sure, endorphins help, but those effects are temporary, aren't they? Like a sugar rush. Nice while it lasts, but not sustainable for everyone. And not everyone has the motivation or energy to get moving, especially when they're dealing with something like clinical depression.
But that's the thing. Exercise gives you energy. It's like a positive cycle. The more you move, the better you feel, and then the more you want to keep going. I've seen it work in my own life. There were times when I felt completely overwhelmed with school and personal stuff, but going for a run kept me grounded. It gave me clarity.
I respect that, truly. And I'm glad it works for you. But what if someone can't even get out of bed in the morning? What if their thoughts are so heavy that exercise feels impossible? Telling them to just go for a jog can come off as dismissive or even harmful.
I get what you're saying, and I don't think it's about forcing anyone, but we should encourage physical movement as part of the solution. It doesn't have to be intense. A walk in the park, gentle yoga, dancing in your room, it all counts. And it does make a difference over time.
There's truth in that. Gentle movement can help, especially when it's introduced gradually and mindfully. But still, for people with deep-rooted mental health issues, the real healing often comes from therapy. Talking to someone who's trained, someone who can guide them through the internal process. Exercise alone won't untangle years of trauma or anxiety patterns.
Of course, therapy is important too. I'm not against that at all. But too often we separate the body and the mind like they're not connected. Mental health isn't just in the head. It's influenced by our entire lifestyle. Exercise is a natural, side effect-free way to support the brain and body together.
I agree they're connected. And ideally, we'd treat mental health with a holistic approach. Exercise, therapy, sleep, nutrition, relationships. But the danger is when people oversimplify. They say, just hit the gym and you'll be fine. That attitude can lead to guilt or shame for people who try and still feel awful.
Fair enough. I guess what I'm saying is it's a powerful tool, not the only tool, but it deserves more attention. We talk so much about therapy and medication, which are valid, but we rarely say, how's your physical activity lately? Maybe we should.
And I'd say, let's be careful not to turn it into a one-size-fits-all answer. Let's remember that everyone's path to healing looks different.
I think we both want the same thing in the end. We want people to feel better. Maybe we're just starting from different places.
Exactly. And maybe that's what makes this conversation important.
You know, this might sound a bit dramatic, but I honestly think running saved me. A couple of years ago, I was in a really bad place. Academic pressure, family issues, a breakup, it all just came crashing down at once. I wasn't sleeping, barely eating, and I kept having these moments where I just shut down. I didn't even recognize myself.
That sounds really hard. What did you do?
Well, at first, I didn't know what to do. I tried distracting myself with video games, food, even just lying in bed for hours scrolling through my phone. None of it helped. In fact, I just felt worse. But one morning, I woke up early, couldn't sleep again, and decided to go for a walk. I didn't even plan it, just put on my shoes and left the house.
What made you go out?
I think I just needed air, space. I watched for nearly an hour. The next day, I did it again. Then I started jogging a little just to see if I could. Within a week, I was running short distances, and I started to look forward to it. I wasn't cured or anything, but for the first time in weeks, I felt in control of something.
That's really powerful.
Yeah, it didn't make all my problems disappear, but it gave me a routine, something to rely on. And over time, it helped me sleep better, eat better, and most importantly, think clearer. I didn't even realize how foggy my brain had become until I started moving again. I never saw a therapist, to be honest. I guess I just worked through it with movement and time. Maybe I was lucky.
Maybe you were. But it also shows that your situation, while serious, might not have been what psychologists would define as clinical depression. It was situational distress. Tough, yes, but something your body and mind could recover from with enough healthy input.
Yeah, that might be true.
Can I share a story too?
Of course.
I had a close friend. Let's call her Emily. We met in high school and stayed friends through college. Emily was the brightest person I knew. Funny, creative, always making everyone laugh. But during our second year at university, she started withdrawing. At first, it was subtle, canceling plans, sleeping all day, skipping class. Then came the panic attacks. I encouraged her to go for walks, even just around campus. She tried. We even signed up for a yoga class together. She went a few times, but eventually she stopped. Not because she didn't want to feel better, she desperately did, but because even getting out of bed felt impossible.
I see.
She started therapy and eventually was diagnosed with major depressive disorder. It wasn't just a rough patch. It was something chemical, something deep. She needed more than fresh air and sunshine. Therapy helped, and later on, medication played a big role too.
Did the exercise help at all?
Not in the way we hoped. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't enough. Actually, I remember her feeling guilty for not being able to just move like people kept telling her. That guilt added to her sense of failure.
That's heartbreaking.
It was. But you know what did help eventually? Consistent support, proper therapy, and time. Now, she's doing much better. And ironically, she does enjoy jogging these days. But it's different. It's no longer a pressure or a prescription. It's just something she chooses when she's ready.
Thank you for sharing that. It really puts things into perspective.
I don't mean to invalidate what worked for you. On the contrary, I admire how you took control of your mental space. But I think it's important to recognize that there's a spectrum. What helps one person might not even reach another.
That's fair. I think maybe I've only seen one side of the story, my side, and I've always assumed it could work for everyone if they just tried.
It's a common belief and a hopeful one. And honestly, encouraging movement is still a good thing. We just have to be gentle with how we frame it.
Yeah. Instead of saying exercise will fix you, maybe it's better to say movement might help and you deserve to feel better.
Exactly.
You know, hearing about Emily really made me think. I totally see what you're saying, that some mental health challenges run far deeper than stress or burnout. But still, the science around physical activity and mental health is pretty convincing.
I don't deny that, but I think we need to look closely at what the data is actually saying.
Fair enough. So here's what I've read. According to a 2018 study published in The Lancet Psychiatry, people who exercised regularly reported fewer days of poor mental health each month than those who didn't. They even accounted for variables like income, education, and physical health.
I know the one you're talking about. And yes, it found that all kinds of physical activity, including walking, cycling, team sports, and even housework, were associated with better mental health. That's great. But remember, it was observational. It showed correlation, not causation.
Right, but even if it's not direct causation, the trend is strong. Exercise is known to release endorphins, our natural mood boosters. It also increases levels of serotonin and dopamine, both important for regulating mood. On top of that, it reduces levels of cortisol, the stress hormone.
Absolutely. The neurochemical benefits are well documented. And for many people, those shifts are enough to make a noticeable difference. But we can't forget about neurodiversity and clinical thresholds. People with major depressive disorder, bipolar disorder, or PTSD often have very different baseline brain chemistry. For them, exercise might help, but it's rarely enough.
That's fair, but isn't it also true that exercise can support traditional treatments like therapy or medication? Like, it might not be the whole answer, but it strengthens the effect?
Yes, and in that context, I'm 100% on board. In fact, cognitive behavioral therapists often recommend movement as part of lifestyle adjustments. But again, the key is framing. Saying this can help is different from saying this will solve it.
Totally agree. I guess the risk is overselling it, especially when it's coming from people who don't understand the complexity of mental illness.
Exactly. Let me give you a statistic. According to the World Health Organization, more than 280 million people worldwide live with depression. Of those, only a small fraction respond to lifestyle changes alone. For most, therapy, sometimes long-term, and in some cases medication, are essential.
And yet, despite how many people suffer, mental health care is still inaccessible for a lot of them.
True. And that's where your point about exercise becomes even more relevant. In communities where therapy isn't available or affordable, movement can at least offer some relief. But we have to be careful not to tell people this is all you need, when in reality, they need so much more.
So maybe what we're both saying is that exercise is a great foundation. It stabilizes the platform so that other treatments, like therapy, can be more effective.
Yes, I think that's a better way to put it. A piece of the puzzle. It contributes to resilience, but it doesn't replace professional care.
I also think there's something to be said about long-term effects. For example, people who stick to regular physical activity tend to develop healthier coping mechanisms overall. It becomes more than just a workout. It's a kind of self-care discipline.
And when paired with reflection, rest, and supportive relationships, it becomes part of a healing ecosystem.
Exactly. I mean, take something like running. At first, it's just exercise. But after a while, it becomes meditative, rhythmic. It forces you to regulate your breath, focus your thoughts. That's not so different from what mindfulness practices do.
You're right. And mindfulness-based therapies like MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, do include light movement, like walking meditation or gentle yoga. So yes, the body is absolutely part of the healing process.
See, we're not that far apart after all.
No, I don't think we are. I just want us to always ask, who are we talking to? Because advice that helps someone with mild anxiety could be dangerous for someone with suicidal thoughts.
Yeah, one message doesn't fit everyone.
I do love how grounded this conversation has been. It's easy to throw around buzzwords like self-care or mental wellness online, but talking like this, honestly and with nuance, feels rare.
I agree, and I think if more people talked like this, we'd have fewer misunderstandings.
And hopefully more compassion too.
You know, beyond the chemicals and studies, there's something more human about exercise. It brings people together. Running with a group, joining a local football team, even just seeing familiar faces at the park each morning. That sense of community, it can be powerful.
I believe that. Social connection is one of the strongest protective factors for mental health, and I can see how shared physical activity creates that naturally.
I joined a running group last year. We meet every Saturday morning. At first, I just wanted the motivation to run farther, but over time, it became more than that. People started opening up, talking about their jobs, their families, even their struggles. It became kind of therapeutic. Not officially, of course, but still real.
That's beautiful. And I don't think you're wrong to call that therapeutic. Just feeling seen and supported by others can be healing in itself.
Exactly. You show up, move together, struggle together, laugh together. It breaks the loneliness.
I wish everyone had that kind of access. But truthfully, not everyone does.
What do you mean?
Well, think about someone who lives in a crowded city with no safe green space. Or someone working 2 jobs, barely getting enough rest with no time to join a club. Or someone who feels so socially anxious that the idea of exercising in public is terrifying.
Yeah, that's true.
There's also the shame factor. We don't talk about it enough, but people struggling with body image, chronic illness, or past trauma sometimes avoid physical activity because it brings up feelings of exposure, failure, or even danger.
I never really thought about that. For me, the park feels like a safe space.
And for many it is, but it's not universal. That's why I'm always cautious when I hear people say things like, just go outside and move your body. It assumes a level of privilege, time, health, energy, safety that not everyone has.
I guess I've always approached this from my own lens, where movement has felt empowering, freeing, healing. But I never stopped to think that for someone else, it might feel overwhelming or even out of reach.
That doesn't make your experience less valid, though. I think it just means we need to hold both truths. Movement can be healing and inaccessible. Exercise can be empowering and triggering. It all depends on the person, the context.
Right. And I suppose that's why conversations like this matter.
They do, because they remind us that mental health isn't a checklist. It's layered. Emotional, physical, social, spiritual, it all connects. And what lifts one person might weigh another down.
I'm glad we're not arguing, more like expanding each other's understanding.
That's what real dialogue should do. Despite our different angles, I think we're circling around the same truth.
That taking care of your mental health isn't just one thing.
Exactly. It's not just running. It's not just therapy. It's not just talking, eating well, meditating, sleeping more. It's everything woven together.
Kind of like a puzzle. Each person builds their own version.
Right. And for some, physical movement might be the first piece that fits. For others, it might be the last thing they're ready for. And that's okay.
I think I used to believe that exercise could fix almost anything because it worked so well for me. But talking to you, hearing your stories, I realize now that what worked for me might not be enough or even accessible for someone else.
That means a lot. I've had similar shifts too. Talking to clients, friends, even professors. It's made me realize that we don't always need to have one right answer. We need to be flexible, compassionate.
Agreed. And maybe instead of trying to convince people that one method is best, we should focus more on giving them options. Let them build their own path to healing.
Exactly. And when we talk about mental health in public, online, in schools, we should be careful not to oversimplify. It's easy to say, just work out or just go to therapy. But real healing takes time, layers, and support.
I still believe in movement, though.
And I do too. In fact, I think it plays a role in every recovery story I've heard, even if it's a small one.
So maybe we can agree on this. Physical activity is a valuable tool, but it works best when combined with emotional support, therapy, rest, and a healthy lifestyle.
Absolutely. And we should empower people to choose the tools that fit them best, not force them into one mold.
I didn't expect to walk away from this with such a balanced view.
Neither did I. But I think the best conversations don't end with someone winning. They end with both people growing.
After everything we've talked about today, I still believe in the power of movement. It might not be the solution for everyone, but for me, every step has mattered. Each run helped me take back a little bit of control, a little bit of clarity. That's why I say every step counts.
Not because it solves everything, but because it moves you forward. And sometimes that's all you need to begin healing.
And I believe that too. But I also believe we need to give people space to heal in their own way. Some need movement, some need silence, some need words, others need stillness. Mental health isn't a quick fix, it's a journey. And real healing often requires multiple forms of care, not just physical, but emotional, social, and psychological. We have to offer understanding, not just advice.
I'll try to remember that. And I'll keep running, but maybe I'll stop assuming that what works for me should work for everyone else.
And I'll keep reading and learning, but maybe I'll spend a little more time walking outdoors, just to feel what you feel.